Now, testing, 1, 2, 3. Bueller. Bueller. Stephen mentioned the clocks. Yes, there's a reason they're here. There's also a reason that they're back there, because they knew I wouldn't look at them anyway. Who's Jesus? I ask that question because the way that we answer it is going to impact how we follow him. Here's a question. Is Jesus different from one person to another? From one culture to another? Or from one time to another? Does he change? Are his standards different for you than for me? For Asian than for European? Are his standards different for tall or for short, for young or for old? Who's Jesus? And does he change? Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, forever. He's constant. He's unchanging. Now, because he's constant and unchanging, that means he doesn't change from person to person, place to place, time to time, culture to culture, ethnicity to ethnicity, tall to short, young to old. He's the same for us all. And anyone that tries to say, your Jesus is different than my Jesus, well, somebody along there doesn't know Jesus. He's the same. Because he's the same, I can take confidence in some things. Because he's the same, I can take confidence in his help. Hebrews 13, I hope you'll look there. That's where we're getting started. Hebrews 13, verse 8, he's the same yesterday, today, forever. Past, present, future. Because he's the same, I can count on his help. It's Hebrews 13 where the Hebrews writer says, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering. Let your conversation be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, Hebrews 13:4. We can boldly say, the Lord's my helper. I'll not fear what man shall do unto me, Hebrews 13:6. We can count on his help, his aid. And because he's the same, we can also count on his doctrine. Hebrews 13:8, he's the same yesterday, today, forever. Verse 9, be not carried away with diverse and strange doctrines. His doctrine doesn't change. His teachings do not change. His expectations for a soul in the first century, the time when he walked this earth, are the same as his expectations for a soul in the 21st century while we walk this earth. Doesn't matter if I'm American or Armenian. Doesn't matter. He's the same. Now, that's going to upset some folks because they want a Jesus that's different from person to person, place to place, time to time. But he's constant. And because he's constant, there's some other benefits from that. Because he's constant, I can look to the past and learn. He's the same yesterday. The only thing that I can do with yesterday is learn from it. I cannot change it. Same today. That means I can apply it, I can live it, and I can trust in it. And he's the same forever. So I can look to the future with hope. I can live for him. I can long for him. And I can love not only the prospect of his return, but everything that's going to be involved once he does return and take us all home. Yesterday, today, forever. Now, that's our overall discussion today. Jesus is the same. My assignment is yesterday. He's the same yesterday, which means learning from the past. What we learn from the past, yesterday's lessons, instruct today's trust in order to instill tomorrow's hope. So what do we learn from yesterday? Let's ask this question. How many yesterdays does Jesus have? If you stop and think about it, there are 365 and a quarter yesterdays in a given year, right? So in 10 years, you've got 3,650. Technically 362.5, since there are 365 and a quarter days in a year, but we're not going to get into all those specifics. In 100 years, That means you've got 36,500 days. In 1,000 years, 365,000 days. If this world has stood for 10,000 years, which would be about the maximum based on the biblical record, you're looking at 3,650,000 days. 3,650,000 yesterdays. And he has more than that. How can he have more yesterdays than there have been days? Because of who he is in his nature. Now let's go to John 1. Jesus has countless yesterdays. Here's why we say this. John 1 begins with a description of the Word. Now, when you hear the word word, what word comes to mind when you hear the word word? You're going to sound like somebody in 90s hip-hop. Word. No. Word. What does word mean? In John 1, it doesn't mean what you might think it means. John 1, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. John is talking about this Word who was with God, who was God, and all things were made by Him, this Word. So this Word is not an it, this Word is a Him. We think about what's said about the Word in John 1. The Word is in the beginning. Now, when you hear the words in the beginning, what Bible verse comes to mind? Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. In the beginning, God existed before the beginning. In the beginning was the Word. The Word existed before the beginning. Whoever this Word is, He's eternal, just like God. So John's talking about someone who is eternal. Not only eternal, in the beginning was the Word was with God. With God. Now, if I am with someone, that means that we are together, but we are distinct. And if I say I'm going to go eat with myself, well, I might have a schizophrenic problem. I might have a problem with discerning who and what I am. No, with indicates that there's a distinction. The Word was with God, in the presence of, but not identical to God the Father. We work our way through John 1, and whoever this Word is, eternal. The Word was with God. And now look at John 1:1 again. And the Word was God. Ooh. Oh man, there's a wrench in my gears. How can He be with God and now the Word was God? Let's put it this way. He's distinct from the Father, but this Word possesses the characteristics, traits of deity. Or let's say godhood, godness. This Word possesses deity. This Word is distinct from the Father. He's eternal. We keep moving forward. By Him were all things made. All things were made by Him. That means whoever this Word is, He's creator. Now you keep moving forward in John 1. You come to verse 14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So now this Word has become flesh. He's deity. He was God. But the Word became flesh. Physical, carnal. What happens if I put a knife to my flesh and press it just hard enough? Can it be wounded? Can it bleed? The Word became flesh, humanity, physical, woundable, bruisable, mortal. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. So here's this Word. He's eternal. He's distinct from the Father, but He possesses the traits of deity. He's creator, and He becomes human. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. We beheld His glory. He possesses glory. What kind of glory? The glory is of the only begotten of the Father. Ooh, only begotten of the Father. What's the most familiar verse for almost everyone when it comes to quoting Scripture? John 3:16. What's that say? For God so loved the world that He gave His... Who's the only begotten Son? John 1:14, we beheld His glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to think this might be talking about Christ. The glory is of the only begotten of the Father, and He's full of grace and truth. Take this forward just a bit further. John 1:17 and 18. The law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by whom? Jesus Christ. So this Word is the only begotten of the Father. This Word is full of grace and truth. We come to John 1:17. The Word, grace and truth comes by Christ. Interesting. John 1:18. No man has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son. There's that term again. Only begotten. Who's with the bosom of the Father. He's declared Him unto us. Now let's backtrack. Let's take everything we've just seen and let's try to bring it together to learn something from it. Here's a thought. I left my envelopes there. It's going to take some imagination. This is item A. This is item B. This is item C. See what I mean? Item C. Now, if I say that A equals B, and that B is equal in value to C, what does that tell you about A and C? They have the same value. If A equals B, and if B equals C, then A equals C. Now, let's do that with what we've just studied in John 1. Jesus brought grace and truth. True or false? The Word brought grace and truth. True or false? So this Word being described in John 1 is the Christ. True or false? So, let's look at another idea, just to make sure we're not, running in front of ourselves. This idea of only begotten. True or false? Jesus is the only begotten Son. True or false? The Word had the glory of the only begotten Son. So the Word being described in John 1 is the Christ, Jesus. True or false? That means that we can go back through everything that we just saw about this Word being described, and what's said about the Word is said about... Okay. That means we look at who brought grace and truth? Jesus. Who is the Son of God? Who became human? Who is Creator? True or false? Jesus is deity, possesses Godhood. True or false? Jesus is distinct from the Father. He's the Son, He's not the Father. True or false? Jesus is eternal. Which is why we said Jesus has countless yesterdays. He has always been. If you want to learn from Jesus yesterday, you have all sorts of material to utilize. But we don't have all sorts of time. So we'll have to keep it somewhat brief with what time we have left. If I'm going to learn from Jesus yesterdays, one thing I have to keep in mind is this. The Son existed before existence existed. Jesus, the Son, the second person of the Godhead, was before anything physical was. He's deity. Now, Romans 15:4, whatsoever things are written aforetime are written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. Let's look at some of the things that the New Testament has to say about the Old Testament, talking about the Christ. For instance, let's go ahead and look at Hebrews chapter 1. We started in Hebrews 13. The last chapter of Hebrews says Christ is the same. True or false? Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, forever. The book of Hebrews begins the same way. Hebrews 1:8 Unto the Son he saith, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom. In Hebrews 1, verse 8, the Son is declared to be deity, God. But then it goes forward. You look at verse 10 through 12. Verse 12 in particular, they all shall change, but thou art the same. The book of Hebrews declares Jesus to be the Son, to be constant and the same. And He's deity. In fact, when you look at Hebrews chapter 1, there are a series of references to the Old Testament. In particular, the Psalms that are mentioned in Hebrews 1, that are songs that are actually being sung not only about, but to the Christ. For instance, Hebrews 1, verse 4. The statement is made that He has a better name than the angels, because He has by inheritance obtained a more excellent name than they. He's better than the angels. Why? Because He has a better name. A more excellent name. Why is He so excellent? Look at Hebrews 13:5. Unto which of the angels did God say at any time, Thou art my Son? This day have I begotten thee. Now, for what it's worth, that is a quote from Psalm 2, verse 7. The Hebrews writer pointed out that the Father was speaking to the Son in Hebrews 2:7 when He said, Thou art my Son, this day have I begotten thee. That verse primarily and overall is directed to the second person of the Godhead. Thou art my Son, this day have I begotten thee. Now, He has a more excellent name because He's the Son. He's deity. But not just excellence. His name is above all names. You ever sing that song, Jesus? Name above all names. Beautiful Savior. Glorious Lord. Emmanuel, God is with us. Blessed Redeemer. Living Word. He's excellent, but He's exalted. Hebrews 1, look at verse 8 this time. Unto the Son, He says, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. The Son is called deity, and He has a throne. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom. Now, if I've got a throne, a scepter, and a kingdom, what's that make me? A king? The Son has a throne, a scepter, and a kingdom. He's a king. He's excellent. He's exalted. His throne is above all thrones. He has a name above all name. A throne above all thrones. But now, Hebrews 1, picking up at verse 10, the description is given, Thou, O Lord. Keep in mind, this is still the Hebrews writer talking about Old Testament psalms that were directed to the Son. Thou, O Lord, hast laid the foundations of the earth. The heavens are laid by thy hands. He'll go ahead to point out that thou art the same. They shall perish, but thou remainest. You'll fold them up as a garment. Like a vesture, they'll be cast away, but thou art the same. The heavens and the earth, the physical world around us, everything material, everything carnal is temporary. We live in a world that has an expiration date. God has not told us what it is, but He has no expiration date. And keep in mind, this is speaking to the Son. Neither does He have an expiration date. He is excellent, He's exalted, and He's eternal. His name is above all names. His throne is above all thrones, and His time is beyond all time. Don't ever allow this secular, soiled world in which you live to turn your eyes from the fact that Jesus' name is above all names, including Muhammad's, or Biden's, or Trump's, or Oprah's. That His throne is above all thrones. That His time is beyond all time. Don't ever lose sight of how high and exalted and marvelous He is. Because throughout time, before He ever walked in this world, the Old Testament gave us a glimpse of His godness, His godhood. But we need to keep moving forward. So this time, let's take a look at John chapter 12. Not only does the Old Testament give us our first glimpse of His godhood, His godness, but it also gives us our first glimpse of His glory. John 12, John will point out that though He had done many miracles, yet they believed not on Him. John 12:37. That the words of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which He spake, saying, Lord, who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For what it's worth. There, John 12:38 is quoting from Isaiah 53. Keep that thought in mind. We'll come back there in a minute. But then he goes further. John 12:39, he says, therefore they could not believe. For Isaiah also spake concerning them, He hath hardened their hearts. Essentially, turned their ears, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and be converted. These things spake Isaiah concerning them when he saw His glory. John 12:41. John says that Isaiah saw his, Christ's, glory. Think about that again. John says by inspiration that Isaiah saw the glory of the Christ 750 years before Christ was born into this physical world. When did he see His glory? Well, that quote in John 12:40 comes from Isaiah 6. Go there for a moment. Isaiah 6 is one of those chapters of Scripture that if we can just begin to get our minds wrapped around what Isaiah saw, we'll be baffled with the beauty of it. Isaiah says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on His throne, high and lifted up, and His train filled the temple. Isaiah saw the Lord. He saw God exalted, high, elevated. But remember, John says Isaiah saw Christ. Isaiah saw the second person of the Godhead sitting on a throne. Isaiah saw the glory of the Son before the Son ever walked in this world. Isaiah saw the glory of His sovereignty. And it's this scene when Isaiah will see the seraphim with 6 wings. With 2 they covered their face, with 2 they covered their feet, with 2 they did fly. He'll hear them saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. And Isaiah will say, woe is me, I'm undone. I'm a man of unclean lips. I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the Lord of hosts. Isaiah sees God and he says, I'm a dead man. The Lord directs an angel, not with words, but the angel takes a coal from the fire burning before the Lord, touches Isaiah's lips, and Isaiah says, ow, that's hot. No. Isaiah realizes that he's purified. I've cleansed your lips. And now you go and you teach. Whom shall I send? Who shall go for us? Isaiah says, here am I, send me. Who was it on the throne saying, whom shall I send? According to John, it was the Christ. Who was it on the throne? The fire before Him was what purified the lips of His servant. It was the Christ. Isaiah saw His sovereignty. Now that's a glorious scene. According to verse 3, His glory filled the earth. The earth is full of His glory, the angels said. But that's not all Isaiah would see about the Christ. He saw the glory of His sovereignty, yes. But remember that other reference that we noted in John 12. Remember John 12:38? When Isaiah had said, Lord, who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm strength of the Lord revealed? Evan, can you come flex? He's not in here. I was going to get him to flex for me. He can do it. It doesn't do any good when I flex. To whom is the arm strength of the Lord revealed? That's Isaiah 53. See, Isaiah not only saw his glory in terms of his sovereignty, Isaiah saw his glory in terms of his suffering. What do we mean by that? Isaiah 53, verse 2, he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, as a root out of dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, and we shall see him. There's no beauty that we should desire him. Isaiah 53 describes this suffering servant of God, the one who's not appealing to man. This is the passage that will describe him by saying he was wounded for our iniquities, bruised for our transgressions. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. With his stripes we are healed. All we as sheep have gone astray. The Lord has laid upon him the iniquity of us all. Isaiah, over 700 years before Christ died for the sins of man, saw a description of what the Savior would do. Scott, I understand. Isaiah saw his glory. By the way, Isaiah 53:11, the Lord shall see his travail and be satisfied. We sing some beautiful songs. One of the songs that brings a tear to my eye every time I sing it is How Great the Father's Love for Us. But there's a line in that song I can't sing. The Father turns his face away. That's error. That's confusion. The Father didn't turn his face away. The Father saw it. The Father suffered through the entire pain with the Son. It didn't get dark because God can't see when it's dark. Where'd we get that silliness? It became dark because prophecy was being fulfilled. No. The Father keeps his focus stayed, focusing on the suffering of the Son because that's what was necessary. The Father forsook the Son. No, he never did. Just as he has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Isaiah 53. We see his suffering. Scott, you've got written up there on that screen, Isaiah foresaw the glory of his suffering. Where's the glory in this suffering? Do you remember what happened after? Isaiah 53:12. He'll appoint him a place with the great, a spoil among the strong, triumph and victory. You think about what he came to do and what he had to do to accomplish it. From the first time man sinned, God had a plan. Do you remember what God told the enemy? When Eve reached for that fruit and took a bite and gave to her husband with her, and he grabbed a nibble himself. She saw that it was good for food, pleasant to the eyes, a tree to be desired to make one wise. Lust of the flesh, good for food. Lust of the eyes, pleasant to the eyes. Desire to make one wise, pride of life. She succumbed to the threefold forms of temptation, and Adam dove right in there with her. God comes, they're hiding. Where art thou? I was hiding because I was afraid. I was naked. Who told you you were naked? Did you eat of the fruit that I told you not to eat of it? The woman you gave me. What have you done? The serpent, he tricked me. Do you remember what the Lord said to the serpent? He said, because you've done this, you're going to go on your belly all the days of your life. Genesis 3:15, do you remember what the Lord said to the enemy? Not the physical snake, the little slithering reptile. Do you remember what he said to Satan? I'll put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed. From the first time sin occurred, God spoke of the seed of a woman who would be the one with enmity, conflict against Satan, who would bruise Satan's head. That's a mortal wound, a death blow. but in so doing, Satan would bruise his heel. This one that would defeat the enemy would be one wounded in the process. Now, help me out. Can anybody think of someone who was born only the seed of a woman, who conquered Satan, but who suffered and was bruised in doing it? Any thoughts? Feel free to speak up. Christ. From the first time sin happened, God described how he was going to conquer the enemy. When Jesus came, he came to do two things. Oh, he came to, that we might have life and have it more abundantly. He came to do the will of the Father. He came in order to fulfill all righteousness, absolutely. But ultimately, he came to do two things. The angel told Joseph, you'll call his name Jesus, for he'll save his people from their sins, Matthew 1:21. Jesus said himself, the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost, Luke 19:10. Jesus came to save souls, true or false? What did it cost him to do that? Matthew 26:28. This is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. He came to save souls, and in order to do that, he went to that cross. Matthew 16:18, he told Peter, upon this rock I will build my church. He came to save souls. He also came to build something. Was it a tree house? Was it a new Maserati? What did he come to build? His church. Now, it cost him his blood to save souls. What did it cost him to build the church? Acts 20, verse 28. Feed the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. He had a mission to accomplish. Save souls, build his church. And in order to do those, he shed his blood. And once he had done that, Philippians 2, beginning in verse 5, though he were a son, yet learned the obedience by the things which he suffered. In other words, he left the glory of heaven, came to this earth, lived as a man. Being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation to all that obey him. That's Hebrews 5, rather. Philippians 2, the point is made that he was found in fashion as a man, became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Wherefore the Father has highly exalted him, that at the name of Jesus every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. Because of what he suffered, he's elevated to a throne. That can take us back to Hebrews 1. Verse 3, when he had by himself purged our sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. When you think of the Christ, you're not thinking of someone that was just a last-minute thought in the mind of God. When you think of the Christ, his deity, his godness, and his glory have always been his. And the Old Testament, the past, the history, this part of the Bible that we so often are guilty of ignoring, these pages, here's the New Testament, but these pages declared his glory, declare his godness, but they also give us a glimpse at something else. Let's move forward just one more time. 1 Corinthians 10, verse 4. Paul is writing to the Corinthian brethren, and he makes the point that they ate the same spiritual meat, they drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of the rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Now here's a question. When's the last time you went out into the woods and picked up a rock and drank from it? Does that happen very often? They drank of the rock that followed them. Who drank from a rock? It would be the children of Israel. 3 times God supplied them with miraculous physical water. Exodus 15, Exodus 17, and again Numbers chapter 20. Twice it came from a rock. The rock that followed them, in other words, the one that supplied their needs, that was with them, according to Paul, that was the Christ. Now, we talk about Israel in the wilderness. We're talking about those people that came through the Red Sea. We're talking about those people at the foot of Mount Sinai. And according to Paul, 1 Corinthians 10 verse 4, the one that went with them was the Christ. The Christ traveled with them. Whereas the Psalms sang about the Christ and Isaiah saw the Christ, Israel traveled with him. Okay? What can we learn about him from this statement that Paul makes? Well, go to Exodus 33. Exodus 33, picking up at about verse 14, God says to Moses, "My presence will go with you." The presence of God went with Moses and Israel throughout their journeys. Keep in mind, Paul says the rock that followed them, that went with them, was Christ. Okay? Exodus 33. This is right after they made that golden calf. This is right after Moses came down the mountain, saw what they'd done, and broke all 10 commandments at once. This is right after Moses goes back up and pleads with God to spare them, and God agrees to do so. But he says, "I'll spare them, but I'm not going with them." And Moses petitions God, "If you don't go with us, then don't send me." When we get to Exodus 33:12, Moses pleads with God. He says, "You have said, I know you by name, that I found grace in your sight." God, you've said you know me. You've said that I found grace in your sight. Exodus 33:13, "Show me thy way that I may know thee." That's interesting. Because at this point in Moses' life, he already knew about God's presence. He'd already spoken with God at the burning bush. He'd already spent 40 days with God on the top of Mount Sinai. He'd had more than a little talk with Jesus, so to speak. He'd had some long conversations with God. He already knew God's promises. As a matter of fact, at the age of 40, Moses expected that God would use him to lead Israel out of Egypt. He's 80 in this scene in Exodus 33. He knew God's power. He already knew God's presence, His promises. He already knew God's power. 10 plagues, Red Sea, and he already knew God's precepts. God has already given the 10 commandments. God has already spent 40 days giving Moses his standards. Exodus 33. Moses already knows God's presence, God's promises, God's power, and God's precepts. Yet he says, "Show me thy way that I may know thee." Well, Moses, what's left to know? Interesting. Suppose I were to ask you, do you know Brother BJ? Now, some will say, "Well, I know of BJ." Others will say, "Oh, I know BJ." See, there's a difference between knowing about and knowing. Maybe I say, "Who's Peyton Manning?" Some will say, "Well, he's a former Tennessee Vols quarterback and Indianapolis Colts quarterback and Broncos quarterback, and he does all those silly commercials." Or you ask some, "Who's Peyton Manning?" and might say, "He's my neighbor," or he's my cousin, he's my friend. See, a list of general descriptions of a person gives a superficial familiarity. Who's God? How many people answer by saying, "Well, he's all powerful and he's all knowing and he's creator"? True. Every bit of that is true. But how many people, when asked who's God, say, "He's my Lord"? If I ask you who's God, will you say he's my master or he's my friend? Moses already knew God's power, presence, precepts. He already knew His promises, but he wanted to know God's personality. He pleaded with God, "Show me your glory." God said, "Moses, I'll make my goodness pass by before you, and I will proclaim my name." Moses pleaded to know God's personality. He wanted to know who God was. God promised to do so. He told Moses, you come up to the mountain. I'll hide you in the cleft of the rock, and I'll make my glory pass by before you. Moses is going to get a glimpse of God's glory, God's goodness, God's very identity, His name. When God passed by, Exodus 34, how did God describe Himself? So often today we want to talk about, well, God is justice. God is right. God is... When God passed by before Moses, the Lord, Exodus 34:6, the Lord God, merciful, gracious, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and in truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and will by no means clear the guilty. Now you think about that description. Merciful, compassionate. Gracious, bending or stooping in favor to another. Long-suffering, slow or delayed and coming to breathing in fury or anger. He doesn't get mad at the drop of a hat. Abundant in goodness, literally abundant in steadfast love. Abundant in truth, that is abundant in fidelity. You can count on Him. Overflowing. Keeping mercy for thousands. The word translated keeping means guarding. The word translated mercy is the closest Hebrew word we have that can compare to the Greek word for family love. This steadfast love, this loving kindness of God is the family love that He has for His children, and He guards it. He protects it. How many of you at the age of 5 were afraid that your parents would kick you out of the house because you kept spilling milk? Is the relationship that shallow? That worthless? Or is a relationship worth protecting? That's how God sees His relationship with His children. He guards it. He protects it. He cherishes it. He keeps mercy for thousands, which is why He forgives iniquity, sins of perverse living, transgression, sins of rebellion, and sin, sins of missing the mark, stumbling. Why does God behave the way He behaves and do what He does? Because God is who He is. When God described Himself to Moses, when He gave His autobiography, He didn't say, I'm powerful, get out of my way. He's power. He began by declaring His mercy, His graciousness. Brethren, we need to understand that He will by no means clear the guilty, as God said in this very text. He will visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, as He said in this very passage. But we also need to remember exactly who our God is. See, when we get this idea that God's just some big heavenly teddy bear that wants to give me a hug, that God really doesn't care how I live, then we're going to live in rampant iniquity. But if I get this idea that God's just some mean dictator looking over the balcony of heaven, looking for an opportunity to strike me with a lightning bolt, oh, he messed up, got him. We get this idea that God can't be pleased, and eventually we're going to give up trying to serve Him. He can be pleased. It just takes trust. Now, without faith, it's impossible to please Him, Hebrews 11:6. But He can be pleased. In fact, He wants to be pleased with us, and He gives us every opportunity to be in a right relationship with Him. Now, this understanding of God's identity defined Israel's history. His forgiveness, but His unwillingness to clear the guilty, those that continue in their iniquity. No, He won't forgive that. You work your way through the Old Testament, and we have to look at these very briefly. And Moses would later refer to God's self-description and petitioning God to spare Israel and not destroy them. Whenever they refused to go up into the land there at Kadesh Barnea, Numbers chapters 13 and 14, Moses petitioned with God, saying, let the mercy of my Lord be great. As thou hast said, the Lord is long-suffering, great in mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression. Moses saw it as a means of petitioning God. Or you think about the psalmist. The psalmist saw it as reason for confidence and care in God and comfort. Thou, O Lord, art a God full of compassion, gracious, long-suffering, plenteous in mercy and truth. Sound familiar? Then we get to Psalm 103. There's a description of God, and it's connected to the idea of reasons to be grateful to God. Psalm 145, those attributes of God are given as reason for praising God. Not just gratitude, but just identifying Him and praising Him for who He is. You look at Joel 2, verse 13, and God's attributes are given as a reason for man to repent. You look at Hosea 4, verses 1 and 6. There's no truth, mercy, or knowledge of God in the land. God's traits weren't being practiced by His people, and as a result, they were being destroyed for lack of knowledge. They didn't know God. Therefore, they didn't try to emulate God. And it was to their downfall. When we don't know Him, it'll be to our destruction. Remember Jonah? He's more than just a big fish story. Jonah actually referred to God's attributes. He said, "This is why I didn't go to Nineveh, because I knew that you were gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and of great kindness. God, I knew you were willing to forgive, and I didn't want Nineveh to experience that. God, I thought your attributes were a personality flaw." Jonah knew God and didn't want others to experience His goodness. Or you think about the words of Nahum. Well, I hit the wrong button there. Sorry about that. Nahum spoke of God's unwillingness to forgive those that persist in iniquity, using the very attributes to describe why God would destroy Nineveh just over a century later. 2 Chronicles 30, verse 9, Hezekiah used God's attributes as reason for people to come to worship God. Jeremiah 32, 18, Jeremiah found comfort in God's attributes. Nehemiah 9, 17, Nehemiah knew that because of these attributes of God, God was willing to forgive those that had fallen away. Throughout the Old Testament, God's identity is referenced by His people. And it's why they keep coming back. Now, how does this relate to the Son? Remember, it was the Apostle Paul that said, that rock that followed them, the one that went with them was the Christ. Would it be fair to say Jesus is merciful, gracious, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth? When you think of Jesus, do you just think of someone who's looking for a reason to accuse you because you've messed up? That's the devil. Jesus is the one who's willing to wash you if you'll just walk in the light with Him. Which is why we can confidently say this: He hasn't changed. 1 John 1, verse 7, if we walk in the light, as He is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, and the blood of His Son, Jesus Christ, cleanseth us of all sin. Compare that with verse 9. If we confess our sins, He's faithful and just to forgive us. Faithful, reliable, just, fair, that's God. When we talk about Christ from the past, the pictures given of Him in the Old Testament, time doesn't allow for us to look at every prophecy of the over 350 in the Old Testament that refer to His coming. But let there be no doubt, the Old Testament declares His godness, His deity, His glory. He's exalted, excellent, and eternal. And the Old Testament declares His goodness. He's that good. So who's this Jesus you know? Who's this Jesus your friends claim to know? And is it ever the case that you don't know who He really is? Because you've been so focused on His severity that you've missed His goodness. Or you've been so focused on His goodness that you've missed His severity. He's balanced. He's knowable. Learning Him from the past, hopefully we have. Because when we know who He is, we can live for Him today and look forward to tomorrow. Thank you for your time. You'll notice I never look back at those clocks. I have no clue what time it is. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Scott.